Andrew Berry might have finally beaten the allegations because even though it's only been one game, the Browns 2025 rookie class looks pretty good. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel, or if you are new here, then please do me a favour and hit that subscribe button. So I've just about gotten over the Browns' horrible week 1 loss to the Bengals. I say just about. I'm able to show myself in public is what I mean by that. It's horrible to lose a game the way the Browns did. We all know this. We're Browns fans. We've been here before. After when you lose a game like that, you don't even want to re-watch the game. You don't want to watch any of the highlights. You don't want to watch any of the film. You just want to try and forget about it. But as I said, slightly gotten over it the last few days. Re-watching this game, getting a better understanding of how the Browns actually played in this game. Outside of my kind of, when you're watching it live, your emotions can get the better of you, shall we say. So having a better look at this game, at the performances from these guys. The Browns lost this game, of course. No one is going to forget that, but that doesn't mean that you can't talk about the positives from that game. Yes, there are, of course, negatives. If you want to hear me talk about the negatives from that game, go watch my review for it. But that's not what I'm here to do today. Today, I want to talk about some of the positives from this game. And specifically the performances from the Browns 2025 rookie class. We had some good overall performances. Overall, Joe Flacco looked good, operated the offense well. The 2 interceptions obviously don't look good on paper, but no one watching is going to blame those 2 interceptions on Flacco. Other players as well. Overall, the defense, all of that stuff. Plenty of positives to take out of this game, but I want to talk about the Browns rookie class today. And, of course, it probably starts with, and I will start it with, the guy that is getting, all fantasy Twitter and all the fantasy world are absolutely salivating over this guy. My biggest draft crush this year, someone that I talked about the whole process, someone that I practically begged the Cleveland Browns to draft. And, someone that, despite some people telling me otherwise, just refused to move off of the idea that he was going to translate into the NFL. This was the most productive college tight end in the history of college football. Yes, there are. Is he the classic tight end build? Maybe not. There are some things you can nitpick with his game. Does he run like his shoelaces are tied? A little bit. But the production is the production. The guy, just turned 21 years old. He did all of that at college at 19, 20 years old. I was convinced that Harold Fanning was going to translate into the NFL. And, as I said at the start, it's only been one game. But boy, what a way to introduce yourself to a fan base. What a way to introduce yourself to the NFL. We all know the stat line: 7 catches, 63 yards. The 7 catches set a NFL record, tied with, funnily enough, Tyler Warren this same weekend for most receptions in a week 1 game by a rookie tight end. So, already starting out as good as any rookie tight end ever has. He was really good in this game. The stats don't do it the full justice. He was used all over the field. He had 29 snaps as an inline tight end, 16 snaps out in the slot. He had 6 snaps out wide. Also, obviously, took that snap in the Wildcat as well. He was lined up as a fullback for that touchdown. He was used all over the field in this game. Was just really impressive to see, and it wasn't just the what we saw from him in terms of the production he got. It was the how much production he got in terms of how much he got the ball. Even me, someone that is a massive Harold Fanning fan, and I talked in the videos leading up to the season how I expect him to be used in the offense. The Browns are going to run a lot of 12 personnel. He's going to be on the field a lot, but I didn't expect him to be second in the target share for the Browns' first game of the season. As I mentioned, this is a 21-year-old tight end. Tight end is that position, is one of those positions that usually takes a little bit longer for guys to develop. You know, it's quite rare you get guys like a Brock Bowers that come in and are great straight away. And Harold Fanning came in and, you know, in his week 1 debut in the NFL, got the second joint most amount of target shares in this game. So Jerry Jeudy at 28%. Of course, he's your wide receiver one, your number one target. Harold Fanning at 24%. Same with Cedric Tillman, also at 24%. Dylan Sampson at 12%, who we'll get to, but 8% for David Njoku. So any David Njoku fantasy holders are probably going to be pretty annoyed about this because, you know, David Njoku, that's not going to remain that, don't get me wrong. David Njoku is not only going to see 8% of the targets every week, but it just goes to show you how much faith that the Browns have in Harold Fanning and how much they believe in him and how much they think he can contribute. You know, he was put in a lot of different spots in this game and pretty much came through, you know, in all of those, other than obviously the drop, which, you know, you can talk about. The miserable fans online are going to be like, oh, well, what about the drop kind of thing. As I mentioned, this is a 21-year-old tight end making his NFL debut in week 1. I'm not justifying the drop. Of course, you don't want to make that. You can't have that happening. But this is someone that had a historically low drop rate in college. He dropped like 2 passes out of, you know, 600 targets in his college career, something crazy like that. And he just made a mistake. I'm not going to sit here and say, well, and just ignore every other part of his performance because of that one drop. Of course, yes, has to clean that up. Don't want to see that again. But that doesn't take away from what we saw in this game from Harold Fanning. The drop clearly impacted his PFF grade, as he somehow wasn't in the top 4 Browns players in this game. He had a below 70 PFF grade, so I'm assuming that the drop obviously was a massive blow on that. But, you know, for anyone watching this game, this is why it's not just Browns fans. There's a lot of buzz around the league for Harold Fanning after this game. He 11% of his routes that he won in this game as well, which was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th in the NFL this weekend, tied with Travis Kelce and Kyle Pitts, with only Brock Bowers at 22%, which is just insane. Tucker Kraft at 18%, TJ Hockenson at 17%, and Dalton Schultz at 15%. So, you know, he's getting a lot of opportunities. He was running a lot of routes. He saw 72% of the Browns' offensive snaps in this game and ran routes on 67% of them. And as I mentioned, obviously, with the 24% of the Browns' targets. So, you know, he ran a lot of routes in this game and he won his routes as well. So probably not that many tight ends this weekend that ran as many routes as Harold Fanning did, and to obviously be as efficient and successful on those routes as a rookie, making your debut. Again, I keep emphasizing it, as a 21-year-old tight end is just so impressive. Fanning is just so exciting because of, you know, just the possibilities of what he can bring to this offense. As I mentioned, he can make plays anywhere on the field. It doesn't matter where you line him up. He is going to be making plays. Really excited for Harold Fanning. Really excited to see what he can do this year. And as I said, buy your Harold Fanning fantasy stock, because he's going to be used a lot in this Browns offense, and it's going to be a lot of fun. Carson Schlesinger, obviously the defensive star of the show, shall we say, led the Browns in all tackles in this game with 8 tackles. Had that awesome tackle for loss where he, on 3rd down, where he just absolutely thumped that Bengals player to the ground, shall we say, and then did a little stare down over the top of him. He really did make a lot of plays in this game. He was the Browns' highest graded player in this game by PFF, not just on defense, but for the whole team. A 90 PFF grade, which was second among all rookies, with only Will Johnson, who had a higher, which is just hilarious that he fell to 48th in the draft. But anyway, this is not an Arizona Cardinals video. 90 PFF grade, as I said, all over the field, just continuing what we saw in the preseason, in training camp. The guy was wearing the green fucking dot in his first ever NFL regular season game, and he came through and was as productive as he was. He wasn't just one of the highest graded rookies this weekend. He was one of the highest graded players this weekend. So, just an incredible performance, as I said, to come in as a rookie, wearing the green dot, having the amount of responsibilities that he had. We can talk about Harold Fanning and obviously all the different spots that he was lined up at on offense. Carson Schlesinger being asked to basically be the quarterback of the defense, be the green dot guy, have the most responsibilities out of any other linebacker, any other guy in that second level, having such a big responsibility for this team's defense, and being as good as he was is just so impressive, so exciting. Cannot wait to watch this guy's future as a Cleveland Brown. He's the kind of guy that you could just see, that's a 10-year starter that could go to the Hall of Fame. He just has that potential, and I might be getting a bit ahead of myself here. This is a guy that's played one game, and I'm talking about the Hall of Fame. Of course, we should probably temper expectations, but what I mean by that, he's just, like a Luke Kelce, like some of these players that we've seen that are just so solid at that position. And, I'm just so happy that the Browns decided to, go against the curve of what a lot of us thought they were going to do in this draft and take a linebacker high. JOK obviously out for the whole year. If we can get JOK back next year, then my God, this linebacker room is going to be terrifying for opposition teams. It would just be so fun to watch Carson Schlesinger and JOK out there running around. But touch wood, if the unfortunate does happen and JOK is unable to play for the Browns again or to play football again, I think the Browns have done a good job in putting themselves in safe hands moving on from that, because as I said, Carson Schlesinger is everything and more that we've expected him to be since he came in, and just, basically looked like the best rookie despite not being the highest drafted rookie. Won the Bassett Award for the best rookie of camp. So, just continuing that into the regular season. So impressive from Carson. Can't wait to keep watching him play in the middle of that defense, as that green dot holder, as the quarterback of that defense, and just see him grow in that position. Another player on offense, Dylan Sampson, someone who, maybe surprisingly surprised a lot of people in this game. Got quite a lot of opportunities in this game. Didn't run the ball that great, shall we say, but no Cleveland Brown ran the ball great in this game. The Browns' run blocking was not very good in this game, so you can't really use that as a detriment against him. He's not supposed to be the Browns' lead back. That is supposed to be Quinshon Judkins. So you're not expecting him to come in and have 25 carries and 150 yards. That's not what you expect from Dylan Sampson. What you expect from Dylan Sampson is to come in on third down, on second and long, or these different situations and make an impact, be explosive, make an impact in the passing game, be explosive on some of the runs that he does get, and he showed all of that and more in this game. It was almost like laughable at points when Joe Flacco just kept dumping it off to him and he just kept picking up 6-7 yards. I mean, how many, as Browns fans, sit there and ask yourself, what was the last Browns running back that that we've seen consistently catch the ball behind the line of scrimmage and just pick up 6-7 yards every single time? Probably Duke Johnson, early days of Duke Johnson. He's so explosive. I think it was 6 catches and all 6 catches as well. He was targeted 6 times. The Browns had a few drops in this game from a few guys, not from Dylan Sampson. As safe as it gets, every single ball that was thrown at him, he caught. I'm pretty sure the majority, I think it was like 4 or 5 of those catches were behind the line of scrimmage, yet he was able to pick up, 6-7 yards at a time. He had a 70 overall PFF grade, but to highlight what I'm talking about, a 92.4 receiving grade, which is an elite grade for a running back as a receiving grade. That's what Dylan Sampson is supposed to offer. They drafted Dylan Sampson as a complement to Quinshon Judkins. It wasn't let's draft Dylan Sampson in a vacuum. He was drafted to be that to be that running back next to Quinshon Judkins, to be that complementary back next to Quinshon. That's what his role was supposed to be. Obviously, Quinshon missing this game. Hopefully, he was meant to be practicing today, but it turns out he's having a meeting with the NFL and he's meant to be practicing tomorrow now. If he's back this weekend, we will then actually see what this run game is meant to look like with Quinshon and obviously Dylan Sampson working off him. And as I said, for what he was drafted for and what he is going to be doing once Quinshon is back and he's in that role, he showed everything and more, just excelled in that role. And, someone that, again, brings a lot of excitement. If your number 2 back can be as good as that in the receiving game and also, be explosive in the run game as well, then, you're on to a winning recipe for your run game. Yes, the Browns did not, the run blocking was not great in this game. There's a lot of things they need to work on up front. But, if they can at least have the baseline of a Quinshon Judkins with Dylan Sampson playing as good as he did in this game behind him, then that raises the floor and, means that when you do and hopefully do sort out those problems that you have up front, then this is going to be a very, very formidable run attack for the Browns because, as I said, I expect Quinshon Judkins to be good, even with what he's, been through this offseason, shall we say. I still expect Quinshon Judkins to be good. I expect him to be the Browns' number 1 back and, be a 1,000-yard borderline type of running back. So to have Dylan Sampson play like this and show the potential he can have next to Quinshon is just so exciting. As I said, can't wait to see them both on the field and see how they work together. Mason Graham is someone that I think a lot of people are maybe not talking smack about, but a lot of people maybe not as impressed with Mason Graham, shall we say, obviously being the 5th overall pick. When your team decides to not draft Travis Hunter, who, we can argue all day about his value as a player, but just the one thing you can't argue is how fun he is as a player and how much, how exciting that is for a fan base to watch a player like that. When your team gives up the chance to draft that player to draft you, fans are going to want to see production early. He's starting as a rookie defensive tackle. I think that already is an indication of where he's at, shall we say. Defensive tackle is, as I mentioned with tight end earlier, probably even more so, is probably one of the positions more than any other that needs development. It takes time for these guys. You look at even some of the better defensive tackles in the NFL right now. Most of them weren't great early on, shall we say. A lot of them took time to turn into who they are. And that's not me sitting here making excuses for Graham. He's a 5th overall pick. Of course, you want to see stuff. But as I said, it takes time for these guys to develop, and also it's quite hard to evaluate defensive tackle play watching a game on the broadcast. Until you actually go back and watch each rep, as I said, it's quite hard. You can't really tell how good they are unless they get a big play, a big sack, and the commentators are talking about it. It's quite hard to evaluate it. So, when you go back and actually watch each rep that Mason Graham had, I think he was more impressive than people give him credit for. The first half was a little bit shaky to start, as to be expected with all of these guys. These are rookies making their first NFL debut in the regular season. But he really came on strong in the second half, in my opinion. He had a lot of good reps in the second half, a lot of good plays. For a defensive tackle, not just a rookie defensive tackle, for a defensive tackle in general. And he was a massive contribution to that 3rd down sack, the very near safety that would have won the game after those back-to-back Miles sacks. He was there, he was causing that pressure through the interior. He played a big role in that sack. So I think Mason Graham is maybe getting not as much credit as he deserved in this game. I think he was better than than some people maybe thought coming away from just watching the broadcast. Also, shout outs to Raheem Sanders as well, of course, another rookie. Yes, not drafted, but, brought in through waivers, still a rookie that the Browns acquired. Aiden Huntington as well made 2 tackles in this game. He got snaps on defense. Wasn't just playing special teams. He had a special team stop as well, which at this point is just becoming like, his trademark thing. Every game it seems to get a special team stop. Both of those guys in those spots, Raheem Sanders being used as we expected as that short yardage back. And both of those guys with Harold Fanning all contributing to the touchdown. If you haven't seen the Boldy breakdown, go check it out. Obviously Raheem Sanders on the 4th and 1 actually getting the touchdown, but Aiden Huntington and Harold Fanning were lined up in the backfield and both made their blocks and basically cleared the lane for Raheem Sanders. So, to see 3 rookies basically all contribute to that touchdown was of course awesome to see. And it's not just the rookies, even though this video is about the rookies. Just the young guys overall has been really impressive in this game, really exciting in this game, and should give you excitement and encouragement going forwards. Guys like Ced Tillman, guys like Isaiah McGuire, a lot of Browns young players were good in this game. Ronnie Hickman, I actually thought had a pretty solid game as well. But Ced, obviously the drop that obviously is drop bobble, whatever you want to call it, that led to the interception is not great. You don't want to see that, of course. But other than that, he was pretty much the Browns, arguably one of the Browns' best offensive players on the field. He made a big impact on this game. As I mentioned earlier, 24% of the target rates. So, Ced Tillman, really encouraging stuff that we've seen since Amari Cooper left. If you spread his stats since Amari Cooper left into a 17-game season sample size, it's over 1,000 yards and it's over 10 touchdowns. So, impressive stuff from Ced, continuing to show why the Browns have a lot of faith in him. Yes, he probably gets more criticism for his drop because he's in year 3 now. This is someone that you really don't want to be seeing this from. He's had drops before than someone like a Fanning, but it's one of them. You shouldn't let one play take away the whole game from from a player, and other than that, he was pretty good, and it was encouraging to see from Ced, who is the Browns' number 2 wide receiver. And Isaiah McGuire, at this point, people are probably getting bored of how much I keep singing Isaiah McGuire's praises. I've been talking about Isaiah McGuire for 2 years now. Someone that flashed early, someone that, I think a lot of people recognised early as like, okay, this is a pretty good development piece that the Browns have here. Someone that even that early on was such a good, run defender as a defensive end. Now, I'd argue he's one of the better run defenders out of any defensive end in the NFL. He really is that good, and what makes him so exciting is, of course, the pass rush development. You could be the best run stopper as a defensive end in the NFL. If you can't, if you're not very good, if you're not a good pass rusher, then no one's going to care. Pass rushing is the sexy part of being a defensive end, and to see his development as a pass rusher is so exciting. In this game, obviously, the pressures and obviously one that accumulated to the sack on 3rd down was literally half an inch away from getting a safety that would have won the game. Just really, really impressive stuff from Isaiah McGuire. 88.2 PFF grades. I said before the game, when the depth chart came out, that I would rather Isaiah McGuire start over Alex Wright. Alex Wright started in this game, and whilst when you go back and watch it, it wasn't quite as bad as I initially thought. But just watching it on the broadcast, it felt like they were just running at Alex Wright on that first drive and having a lot of success doing so. It wasn't quite as bad when you go back and watch it. But the reason I would rather Isaiah McGuire starting ahead of an Alex Wright, I believe Alex Wright is he's a better pass rusher probably than Isaiah Maguire right now. But even saying that, with Isaiah Maguire's development next week, he might be a better. Do you know what I mean? But but I think he's better as a situational pass rusher. In more of a rotational pass rusher on that defensive line, and Isaiah Maguire more as that every down guy, as I mentioned, because of the run defending aspect of it and the continued development as a pass rusher. I think Isaiah Maguire should be starting, but either way, it's just so exciting going forward to see these young guys. As I said, it's not just the rookies, all the young guys all together. Really, really exciting in this game, and a lot of excitement going forward into this season. If the Browns have a bad season, which they might, we've all sat through some pretty bad football as Browns fans. This would probably be one of the more fun bad seasons, shall we say, if it was to be the case, because there is a lot of fun young players on this team, a lot of guys that every week are gonna provide a lot of entertainment and a lot of encouragement and a lot of promise going forward for this team. So the Browns lost this game, of course, that's what's going to be the story, but I don't think it should be lost how good this Browns rookie class looked, and how good these young players looked all together. And Andrew Berry, he gets a lot of criticism for his drafts. It's probably one of the biggest things people hold against him. I've not saying that I think he's a really, really good talent evaluator and really good at scouting talent. I'm not saying he's had the best drafts ever, but I do think it's been a little bit, maybe a bit over the top, shall we say, not having a first round pick for 3 years, which, yes, of course, was because of his trade, but that's still not having a first round pick. Whether or not it was him who traded it or not, that's still not having first round picks. And some of the players that he was able to get, all of that criticism. And this Browns 2025 draft is looking like he has cooked up something potentially special. This could be one of those draft classes, and I don't want to be hyperbolic. I don't want to, be too enthusiastic with what I'm saying, but I genuinely believe that this Browns 2025 draft class, could eventually be one of those drafts that we look back on in 5-6 years and think, wow, what a draft that was. That really was one of the better Browns drafts we've seen in recent memory. Every team has one of those draft classes that they look back on, and I feel like this could be one of those drafts for the Browns. Just the players they were able to get at the spots, at the positions that they got them at. I just think, this could be a very, very special draft class for the Browns. Already week one, they've got, multiple players from this draft class starting, contributing, impacting. I mean, your first 3 picks, obviously minus Quinshon, your first 4 picks other than Quinshon Judkins, all pretty much starting in this game and contributing a lot in this game. That is very impressive. I can't speak highly enough. And as well, as I mentioned, I think he's gotten a little bit of maybe undeserved criticism for some of the drafts. You look back at the 2023 draft as well. This Browns 2025 draft, I'm not saying the 2023 draft is going to be seen as that. This 2025 draft, as I said 1,000 times, I generally believe could be special and one of the better Browns drafts we've ever seen. But the 2023 draft, a draft that, I see a lot of people criticising Andrew Berry for. A lot of people have, made their displeasure known about that draft class. But when you actually look at it now and, after week one of this season, 2025 NFL season, so, going into the 3rd year of these guys, the Browns had 7 picks in that draft. They didn't make a pick until pick 74, yet they still have 3 starters that are currently on the team 3 years in their 3rd season. Cedric Tillman, who obviously they picked with the first pick at 74 in the 3rd round. DeJuan Jones, in the 4th round, picked 111. And Isaiah Maguire in the 4th round, picked 126. As I mentioned, getting one of the better run defenders as a defensive end in the NFL at 126 is already incredible value. That's fantastic draft. That's a great value for that pitch. For him to then to develop into the pass rusher that he's becoming and potentially be, the long-term number 2 defensive end next to Myles Garrett is just insane value. That is incredible value. That is, 4th round picks don't stay on rosters within 3 years, and this is a 4th round pick that is arguably the Browns' second best defensive end on the team and is contributing at a high level on the team. DeJuan Jones, people can criticize him. There's plenty of flaws that he had in this game. He was atrocious run blocking. He needs to put more effort in the run blocking. He seems to he never seems to block longer than he needs to. He always seems to maybe get a little bit, shall we say, not confused, but a little bit out of place, shall we say, in run blocking. But as a pass protector, is really good in this game. The grades aren't great, and I think a lot of that is because of the run blocking. But there are obviously some pressures that he has been credited with, but when you go back and watch the reps, I think he held his own in this game. Obviously, playing left tackle, for, position that he's been moved to, something that he's obviously having to learn. So DeJuan Jones, there's still obviously a lot of questions to be answered whether or not he is going to be that long-term left tackle. But to get 2-3 years of a starting tackle out of a 4th round pick alone is good value. And then, as I mentioned, said Tillman, who continues his development, continues to impress. So I really do think that Andrew Berry is starting to shake off the accusations, the allegations, shall we say, that he's terrible at drafting. As I said, I think this 2025 draft is going to be a special draft class for the Browns, and then even some of the other draft classes in recent years that have not gotten a lot of love. Last year, Mike Hall, when he's back, is going to show people how good Mike Hall is. Putting him in this defensive line, you're going to see how good Mike Hall is. Jamari Thrash, he's shined in the preseason. He could be big this year. Nathaniel Watson, who before getting injured looked like he was potentially going to start, maybe over Devin Bush. Miles Harden, he's 7th round pick that started in this game and was actually quite solid, to be honest with you. I was worried about the Browns' nickel spot. Miles Harden had no reason to hang his head in this game. He was solid. Jawan Briggs, who they traded and got a pick for. 2022, Martin Emerson, Alex Wright. There are Jerome Ford, of course. Maybe not mention that one after this game. And obviously the year before that, Greg Newsome, JOK. Year before that, Grant Delpit. So the idea that Andrew Berry doesn't draft good players, to me, has always been a bit ridiculous. I think he's gotten borderline 1st round talent, not in the 1st round, not having 1st round picks. Again, I'm not sat here saying that he's the best drafter in the NFL. I'm not even saying he's in the top half. I just think it's a little bit overstated, the whole kind of thing. And I think now that after this 2025 draft, I do think he's going to flip that narrative. People are going to say winning and all of this stuff. I understand, winning is, of course, the goal. No one is denying that. But I do think to just ignore players' development, ignore the positive things that you see from young players and what they bring long term and what that does to the outlook of the team long term. I think to just do that is just naive, to be honest, and just being miserable. If you're talking anything positive about the Browns after they lost and people are trying to criticize you for that, just feel sorry for them, because to be honest, if you can't watch this Browns game, even despite the loss, despite how they lost, if you can't watch this game and be excited about what we saw from the Browns rookies and those young players, then I'd feel sorry for you, and I don't really know what to tell you. But that will probably do it for me. Just noticed how long I've actually been chatting shit for now. Browns lost this game. Plenty of exciting stuff to take from it. Baltimore coming up. Obviously going to do a few more videos before that. But That will do it for me today, guys. Thank you so much for watching. If you do enjoy my content, then please drop this video a like, hit that subscribe button. It's free, but it really helps out my channel. You can also check the links in the description to see where you can follow and interact with me on social media. As I always say, I'm trying to build a community of Cleveland Browns fans, and even if that means I only get to talk to one fan a day, I'm happy because I'm talking Browns football with the best fan base in the world. Thanks again for watching, guys. Have an amazing rest of the week. Look forward to the Browns-Ravens, but most importantly, go Browns.